told you this was gonna be tough, but Yo, what's up, homies? This is Mikey Camel. I just want to make a quick public service announcement to say that smoking is cool and that everybody should be smoking. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. No, I'm kidding. You see, this is what happens when they let us off of work early on a Friday, and I have nothing better to do with myself than act a little silly. So you see the title of this video, you know what this is about. This video was actually inspired by a conversation that I had with a coworker, and we were talking about smoking, and she said, you know what, maybe you should make a video about it. And at first I was kind of like, I don't think so. I don't think it kind of goes with my normal channel stuff. But then as I was explaining what my channel was, what I thought it was about, I realized actually this is a perfect topic for me to discuss, because I'm sure a lot of y'all out there can relate to, maybe you are still smokers, maybe you used to smoke, or, you know, I think it affects so many of us still. So it is important for me to make this video. I want to start off first by giving a disclaimer. This is not going to be the normal quit smoking video where I'm just trashing cigarettes and just talking about how horrible they are. I'm just going to tell you my story of just my experience, what I went through, the good, the bad, and the good of it all. Let's just get into it, okay? So I grew up with a mom who smoked occasionally, a father who smoked more, and a stepmom who smoked all the time. So I was always surrounded by smoking in the house. It was never a big deal for me. I never had any desire to smoke a cigarette growing up, believe it or not. It wasn't until I got in the military I had my first cigarette, and I'll never forget that night, because I remember I was in Florida, but on a temporary detachment in Nevada, and this was one of those detachments where like nothing was going right. We were working late every single night. There was just so much stress. And my friend, who was my roomie, this one particular night, we go back to the room. He says, I'm gonna go out and smoke. I go out with him, and I will never forget when he took that first puff of the cigarette, he just kind of exhaled, and you could see all of the stress leaving his body and thinking, man, I want that same feeling. So I said, can I bum a cigarette? Yeah, he gives me a cigarette. And so for the rest of that detachment after work, we would kind of smoke a cigarette or two together, and that was that. Get back to Florida, not really thinking about cigarettes, but you know, I'm still kind of new and making friends with a lot of military folks. A lot of military folks smoke to this day. And I work with a bunch of them who, there's a lot of smokers. But trying to be cool and make friends, and you know, with the popular dudes at work, they all smoked, so I kind of began smoking. And that whole Joe Camel intro that I did was because Camels that was the first cigarette that I went to the store to purchase, and the first ones that I smoked. You know, after a while, you kind of experiment with others. So I did smoke Newports and then Winston, and then ultimately back to Marlboro Lights, which was that first cigarette that I had with my friend. And so I smoked for about 10 years, I would say. In the beginning, I think like most of us, you have a desire to quit smoking, and I had several attempts. They would be successful for like maybe a month or 2 or 3 or 4, but eventually I would slide back into smoking, and I tried everything. You know, the whole common thread of, you know, you should have quit cold turkey. I tried that each time, and I would do whatever I could think of. Like one time I would go out with the smokers to the smoking area with like a straw and kind of chewed on that while they were smoking, just to keep up the same habits. But again, each time I failed and went back to smoking. The last time that I attempted to quit during that stage, I remember it, man, it was miserable. Like, it was a miserable attempt. I felt horrible the entire time. Like, it was not good. So much so that when I started smoking again, it was kind of like, you know what, Mikey, maybe you're just gonna be a smoker. Maybe that's just your destiny, and you don't dislike it. Actually, I liked smoking. So I went from that attempt to quit to kind of being pro smoking, where I thought of any positive that I could think of. I kind of latched onto that. So as far as helping with stress, cigarettes did that for me for sure. Keeping your weight off, which that was huge for me. Cigarettes help with that too. Another thing, and I'm not a doctor, this could just be a matter of just coincidence and timing, but I grew up asthmatic. Like while I was in the military, I had my nebulizer, I had my asthma pumps, but after I started smoking, went away. No more asthma. And so that was another pro for me. Again, not to mention the whole social stuff. And the reason why I think this topic matters to this channel is because I had low self-esteem. And so part of that was me trying to fit in and trying to blend in with the masses and be just like them. And whatever it took, I was going to do that. But not just my friends at work, but even after I kind of came out of the closet and started going to gay bars and clubs, that was another segment of the population where smoking was part of the culture. And so lots of gay dudes smoke. And again, you're trying to be cool. You're trying to hook up, all this stuff. And so it was kind of a thing where I wanted to smoke to look cool, and it made me look cool. And I think guys thought I looked cool smoking. So that was another reason to continue smoking and be pro smoking. What happened? It wasn't anything crazy, no medical scare, nothing like that. I start this new job, and my friend, who was my boss at the time, I remember we'd worked together for about a year, and she mentioned something to me about that she got a vape for her husband. This is when vapes first came onto the scene, and saying that she really hoped that he continued with it because of the benefits that, whatever. At the time, it was a better option than smoking, and he could also smoke in the house. So I thought, oh, okay, because here's the thing. Well, first off, I never smoked in the apartment or the house. Like, I preferred to go outside for that. And so I thought maybe, the other thing is that we also started to work from home. So I thought maybe if I started to vape, I could do both. I had no intentions of quitting smoking, but I thought working from home, if I vaped, I could do it at my desk. So if it's a crazy busy day, I can just vape there and then go out to the balcony to smoke. So that was kind of like the plan. And I thought, to begin, what I'll do is I'll just keep the vape and the cigarettes by each other, right by the balcony door, so that in the beginning, I wanted to vape outside just to keep the habits similar. So that was the plan. So the first time, I go out to the balcony, grab my vape, and while I'm out there vaping, I'm, again, just keeping it honest with y'all, vaping was nowhere near a cigarette for me. I thought, no, this is not a cigarette. It's not giving me that same hit. But it was good enough. It was good enough, so much so that each time I went to the balcony, I grabbed the vape instead of the cigarettes. That pack of cigarettes stayed there for forever. Like, I never smoked another cigarette out of that pack. I went for the vape every single time. And so then I became a vapor. So smoked for about 10 years, and then I vaped for about maybe 3 or 4 years, something like that. And of course now I can vape inside. I was able to do that. So there were a lot of pros to vaping. The biggest pro for me is that, with smoking, obviously there's an addiction to nicotine. There's also the oral fixation, also taking those moments out of your day to go smoke if you're smoking outside, So all of that was still there with vaping for me for the most part. But what was different was that all of the other chemicals that are in smoking that you get addicted to, I had this sense that I wasn't as addicted to vaping as I was to cigarettes. And so when I even thought about maybe I could quit vaping, it wasn't this far-fetched, idea. It wasn't something where I just kind of rolled my eyes and thought, oh gosh, here we go again. It's going to be horrible. For the first time, I thought, you know what? Maybe I could. And that was it. Like maybe I could. I put down the vape, and just like that, I quit vaping. And so that's my story. Well, I guess what I also need to add is that, because I mentioned the pros of smoking, is that the pros of not smoking is that obviously, well, most importantly for me is that my asthma never came back. That was a fear of mine, that it would come back after I quit. I still don't have asthma, but also my lungs are better than they were when I was smoking. So it's a super bonus, obviously, as you can imagine, health-wise. Secondly is financially. I mean, cigarettes are crazy expensive. Vaping is pretty up there too. It's an expense that if you don't need to have, why have it? So I have saved a lot by not doing either. And third is that I just finding other ways to, building my self-esteem. I didn't need that crutch of a cigarette, but then also finding other ways to deal with stress without having to go to a drug. Because even with therapy, where at one point I was kind of offered, like, maybe we could put you on medicine. And I thought, I don't want to rely on anything for my happiness. I just want to rely on myself. How do I get there without that? Like, I want to try everything before I even attempt taking drugs. And so these tools that I have learned to feel good about myself, to deal with stress and hardship without having to turn to anything, that's one of the biggest pros I could ever think of. It's what's helped me get to where I'm at today. So I don't want this video to come off as this is what I did and this is what you should do, because my path, I don't think any doctor is going to recommend, oh, why don't you vape instead? Especially with all the stuff that's coming up now about vaping and separate set of dangers that comes along with vaping. So that's not what this video is about. I'm not offering advice. I'm not saying you should do what I did. All I'm saying is, if I have to give any advice, this is it. What I think eventually helped me was that any way that I could find a way to tweak kind of my situation, whether that be going outside to smoke and not smoking in the house, or deciding to do vape, or just any little thing that I could think of, it ultimately helped break the addiction. So that's all I would recommend to y'all. Of course, cold turkey is still the best way to go, but until you're ready for that, until you're at that point, before you even get there, any way that you could find to tweak your situation to where maybe whatever the addiction is, where it's kind of lessened or just kind of timed or spaced out, where it's not like this, you're constantly smoking all the time and relying on that for every little bit of happiness. Anything that you could do to kind of just minimize that effect, just do it. There is no harm that's going to come to you from making those little tweaks in your life. So if anything, that's my only suggestion, recommendation, advice to y'all. That's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, like would be great, subscribe would be even better, but most importantly, comment. Let me know if you are a smoker, if you were a smoker. I want to know your story. What are your struggles? If you stopped, how did you do it? Any information would be helpful. It's not just to me, but to anyone who's reading the comments. I think it would be helpful. So yeah, until next time, bye. One last thing, Papa, just so that we certain, Mikey Camel does not endorse smoking. Got that? Got that, fool?